Hello and welcome back to another video on my YouTube channel where I try to focus on the business of real estate and real estate investing. In today's video we're doing things a little different than what we've done in the past. So first off, I'm getting help with the video editing by a Swedish friend named Edvin, who is trying to get into the business himself, and he told me pretty early that what we should focus on first is make sure we get better audio. Off on the inside, so he's plumbed it, he's put in electricity, got a sewer work. So we went ahead and ordered one of these things and hopefully that will help for better audio. So in order to try it, I wanted to start with a video where I get to try it in several different locations and several different settings. And this first one is me out walking along what used to be an old train track. So I have an inspirational story about a guy who made business with just this. Today this one we're on right now is a bike path that runs along quite close to where I live, and I go on it quite often. It's really nice. But there was this town, the Midwest town in the United States, where they took away the railway completely. They didn't need it anymore, and the railway ran straight through the town. So they just wanted to take it away because the trains were not needed, and then try to sell it off to someone. But it was so narrow and so tightly squeezed in between all the houses that they had no way of doing anything with it. Everybody figured well, what can you do that's so long and narrow? You're not allowed to build a street there, you're not allowed to do anything with it. So they got really concerned about what to make of it, and no one would buy it because no one could figure out what to do, and it sat vacant forever. It started getting all overgrown and no one was interested. And then they kept lowering the price, hoping that eventually someone would come pick it up and do something, just so they got off their hands, the county's hand. They didn't want it, so they lower the price, see if someone bites on it, lower the price, see if someone bites on it, but nothing happened. And until that day when someone really clever came along, and what he did, and this was really cool, so he got it for next to nothing, giving that they hadn't been able to sell it to anyone forever. And then he went to all the property owners surrounding that little stretch of railway, because there was houses, like I said, backing up to it on either side, making that piece of land too narrow to do anything with. What he did is went to all the property owners that lived right next to it, like these ones here, and asked if they didn't want to extend their lots. So instead of trying to do something with the land himself, he's chucked off all these pieces individually and tried to sell them off to the property owners backing up to the railway. And he could do that fairly cheap for the property owners, who would pay a lot less for that extra bit of land than they did for their original lot. So when he came along, knocked on their door and said, hey, how would you feel about adding a few hundred square feet to your lot, or a few thousand square feet to your lot, for just a few $100s or a few $1,000s or whatever it was at the time, most of them got really excited and jumped on it immediately. And since the stretch was so long that you got a lot of parcels sold to all these individual landowners backing up to the railway, so he made all that money invested back with it, I don't know, tenfold, maybe even more. I know sketchy details because a story was told from a friend who heard it from a friend, so you know how it goes. But just brilliant to see that way of thinking, where you look at something that everybody else thinks is crap and have no clue what to do with, and you get that idea that, you know what, there is value here, and this is how we're going to find it or extract it. So I always find these things very inspirational. On to the next story. Story number 2. Behind me there is a building being demolished, and we maybe think of, so there was, see if I get this right. So again, most of these stories, it's someone told someone who then told me, so there have been a few steps along the way before they got to me. So I got them somewhat wrong, but it's the underlying message in these here inspirational stories that inspires me, and I'm hoping to inspire you with the same. So for a long time there was a building similar to this one for sale. The guy owning it had kept losing money after his previous renter moved out, and the previous renter was who they built the building for. The building was built in a very specific way, and there wasn't much foot traffic to, or traffic in general, to the business that was residing in that building, so they made very little parking. And hence that little parking, no other business was willing to go in to the property, to that building, because they needed more parking and it just wasn't available. So he gave up after a few years when he found he can't rent it, sold it for cheap, or tried to sell it first. No one would pick it up, and they tried and tried and tried, and eventually a guy came along, gave him a super low offer, and as he was so tired of bleeding money, he let the new guy buy it for next to nothing. And the new guy was brave enough to buy this big building, and the first thing he did was just demolish half of it. He just went right through and demolished half the building, threw all that stuff away, built a new exterior wall, and added parking space instead of building. So what he did technically was destroy half the building, throw it away, and in doing so he actually doubled the value of the property. So when he had adequate parking, he can make a few little few different storefronts in that whole building that was in the half the building that was left, and that half building he got occupancy into it immediately, and it rented really well, and there was just years of good money coming in. So with that, he managed to make more than double whatever money he spent on buying and demolishing and rebuilding the property in just a matter of a few years, probably months, in a year or so, and then just resell it with full occupancy and get a good payout for the work he did. But it's just sort of brilliant. Again, those simple things. So no one would buy the property because there wasn't enough parking, and he had the guts to just buy it, demolish half the building, throw it away, create adequate parking for the square footage of building that was on the property, and then had a functioning property that had a much higher value than the bigger property that didn't have a function to it. So those little things, being able to see past what others miss, I just love those little stories, and I do my best to be very open and creative when we're out and about to see those opportunities and not just let that pass. But yeah, I think it's pretty cool. So demolished buildings. Number 3, you're joining me in my car, where we're out driving up and down a couple of neighborhoods real close to where I actually did a really good deal myself. Me and my wife found a house, and the story of that I find quite inspirational. I guess it's in lines with whatever you put your mind to, you can achieve. So there are areas here in Florida, like the one we're in right now, where there are thousands of houses, literally thousands of houses. These were built in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, and they just machined them out. These one-story cement buildings with 2-bed, 3-bath, 3-bed, 2-bath, standardized suburb living, and they just kept making them and making them and making them. And as a result, there are hundreds of streets you can drive up and down looking for anything for sale, because obviously with so many houses in a transient area like Florida is, eventually stuff comes up for sale. And we were in a position where we just felt like we needed to get one more investment. We wanted to buy one more single family homes, and this one actually ended up being one of the best we got. So it started with us just what do we do? There's nothing on the market. We can't find anything on the classifieds. There's nothing on the internet. We checked Zillow, we checked all these realtor.com. We had realtors looking for us, but the market was picking up and nothing was coming out for sale. So we just got tired of waiting and hoping something would come along, and decided to actually go out and get something. And we did it by starting early in the morning, buying big jugs of coffee, and just driving up and down endlessly in all these neighborhoods, on all these streets, calling on every single for sale sign we saw. And the average going rate at that time in these neighborhoods was around $90,000 to $120,000. And we called and we called and we called, and they were all in that area. Some were actually negotiable, so we got some down to 80 or even 78, I think was the best. And there were some for sale by owners where we had a little bit more wiggle room. We could get in the 80s and 90s, which was still good because it was under market. And if I knew what the market would do, of course we should have bought much more. But Yeah, we just kept going for days on end, up and down each street, calling everything, until one day when we hit this one for sale side, like for sale by owner outside a house that looked a little rough but not bad per se. So we called on it and talked to him for a while, and then we found out that he bought this house for his daughters a while back and he got a good deal on it, and they stayed there for a bit, and now he just wanted to get rid of it because the daughter had divorced this guy she moved in with, and it was just sort of a family mess, and he wanted it off his hands. So if we really wanted it and could pay cash, you can have it for, I think he said 57 was the first bet. We were like, wow, that's so much better than all the other ones. This is like a lot more in line with what we were doing. The numbers might be wrong because I'm not, but he came up with this, and then we figured, well, that's good. That's a starting point, and we're happy to negotiate with you. We need to make this deal work for us, so we're going to need to work on a number that fits our model better, and we have the cash, so if we can just agree on something, we're willing to do something quick. And it turned out he was reasonably negotiable, so we actually got it down quite a few $1,000s more, and ended up buying a house just around $50,000, which was more or less half market price for that house in its current condition. There was, for instance, a neighbor just one door over who sold their house for 90 something plus, and that was a smaller house. So yeah, that was just brilliance. But no, that wasn't brilliance, that was an arrogant way to put it, but it was not luck either, because we worked hard for it. What's the word you're supposed to use here? We got a good deal because we're willing to put in the effort, I'd say. But it was very rewarding to see it was possible to just, like, if you set your mind to it, you can go out and find the property you need, even though the market and the current surroundings might not be serving you the best opportunities. If you just put your mind to it, they're there. Just go do the work. And we did, and it paid off, and we're really happy with that house. We still own it, and it's renting great. And yeah, that's about it. There's more, by the way, information about that house in my book. So if you haven't read my book yet, please go on Amazon.com or Adlibris if you're in Sweden, and buy Investing for Freedom by Lars Dyrendal, which is me, the book I wrote, and buy it, and help me with reviews if you could, because that's really good for getting the book to get more exposure. And if you do buy that book, in it you can read a lot more about the house I just described just now. So yeah, driving worked. We drove for hours, but we had a good time. Music on, coffee in the car. It's just, I always enjoyed being in the car anyway, so that was a great way to do it for us at the time. And if you really want something, then yeah, go out and look, because the nuggets are there if you're just willing to actually put in the work and go look for them. Right behind me there is a rather big storage facility where they have just a big plot of land on a pretty convenient location, and surrounding this area there's a lot of canals and stuff leading to the Gulf of Mexico. So there's a ton of people with boats, and there's also a lot of tourists coming down with RVs and stuff. And places like the one behind me is just sort of a fenced lawn where people are allowed to park all their stuff when they're not using it, if they don't have room on their lot or if they're leaving for a while. So it's a really nice business model where companies buy land, fence it, and make it work as a storage facility. And one of the most clever guys to do a deal like this that I've heard about, he was in a bigger town, and that city was closing up one of its old landfills, and they had no clue what to do with it, so they tried to sell it. But being an old landfill, you had settlement issues and stuff was moving about, so even though it was a pristine location that would have been great for development, no one couldn't really develop it because the land was moving and it was just a mess, and also full of chemicals. So what this guy did was he gave the county a extreme lowball offer. The county thought about it for a while, and no one else popped up to give any offers at all, so they just said, well, fine, you can have it. And he did just this. Just fenced it and created a storage facility in dead center of a very popular town, which ended up being a cash cow, like a complete cash cow, a cash flow monster that made him so much return on investment that is ridiculous. And that's simple but brilliant. Again, it's so clever with these simple solutions to some major problems. But yeah, that was a pretty inspiring thing he did. And This is what it looks like from a little further up. They're moving a boat over there right now, just using a forklift. You join me in the swamp. So swamps is something there's quite a lot of around the southern states here in United States, and they can be a little tricky. There's a lot of land for sale that are nothing but swamp, and having nothing but swamp tends to equal that it's land you can't really do anything with. And if you can't do anything with the land, what's the value of it? And this guy found a big parcel that was nothing but swamp for sale. It was in a great location and he really wanted to go in and buy it, but no one knew what to do with it because it was all swamp. So he figured, I'll do similar to the guy that bulldozed half the building. He decided he would buy the land and talk to the county and say, well, what about this? What if I give you back probably 3/4, I think, 3/4 of the land, and in return I get to keep this one parcel, but if I am to give you all that, I want a permit to dig out the swamp, make it into a lake, and then put that land onto the quarter I keep. And that turned out to fit the county just perfectly, because all they wanted was access for more recreational areas and bird habitats and all kinds of stuff. So they were happy and he was happy, and he managed to take, you know, all this wasteland and turn it into like the swamp and turn it into an actual plot with water surrounding it. So he got waterfront, lakefront property on a pristine location where no one else knew what to do with it, like that land before, as it was just swamp in the middle of, like, yeah, so it's a clever solution. Just that idea of like being able to sacrifice to get something smaller but better, and that little thing has so much more value than that whole thing. So it's like the opposite to greed that pays off in the long run, almost biblical. But yeah, it was pretty cool. So he bought a big swamp, dug out 3/4 of it, and put that extra sand on the final quarter. The final quarter became a good buildable plot in a great location, and he gave the rest to the county. So turned something into nothing. That guy actually wrote a book that I really enjoyed. It was called My Life in 1,000 Houses. So if you want to read a fun book about an interesting fellow, you can read a book called My Life in 1,000 Houses. Yeah, swamp. Who knew? There's value in the swamp.